as a jury, the message we were trying to send to the world was, health is now everyone's responsibility. And I think, perhaps most importantly, over the last sort of 12, 20, 24 months, health has gone from being a vertical into a horizontal. It's something that companies that aren't in the traditional health space are now in health space because it's such an important part of our lives. So, we very much wanted to acknowledge that kind of work, to encourage companies to do work in the health space. But also we were looking for work that I think probably because of the time we're living in, we were really looking for work that not only stood out creatively, but maybe sort of helped lift society to a higher level, that actually contributed and kind of lifted us all up to a higher level. We have a philosophy at our agency, which is to leave the world healthier than we found it. And I think we were looking for work that really reflected that kind of thinking of like, how does this contribute to society and leave the world a bit healthier? Yeah, we definitely had a North Star when it came to awarding work. I mean, it's obviously, you come in there with the highest of standards, and the jury was amazing, and they've all been winners before. But I think we were looking for two things really. One, as I mentioned, we were looking for work that really lifted society, and that was our North Star. But we were looking for that work that kind of made you just go, oh, I wish I'd done that. The stuff that made you feel jealous, and I think work that would go down in the history books that we might be talking about in a couple of years to come. So it's a pretty tough ask, but some beautiful work made it through. I do think the jury was tough. I think certainly a couple of the jurors in particular were making comments that is this the kind of work that we'll remember in years to come. Obviously, it was quite challenging for me as the president because the three golds were all from my agency. And I have to leave the room during any discussion around that work, so I wasn't really able to input. But I think the jury was tough but fair. I think what we'd like to look back on afterwards is look at the body of work that won and go and just think, does this represent both the present of where healthcare sits in terms of the quality of work, and does it represent the direction in which healthcare advertising and marketing will head for the next 12 months? And I think we're pretty pleased with what we shortlisted and ultimately what won in the end. Health and wellness and pharma and medical, they are really kind of worlds apart, although there are aspects that cross over. But I think, what I would say is look for ideas that any company can do that play a meaningful role in people's lives in terms of health. And I think if you're contributing work that delivers to that goal, then ultimately that's what stood up in the awards, in the judging. We saw work that was very smart and certainly achieved its goal from a marketing point of view, but did it really sort of contribute at that level, and did it sort of, was it new and surprising and different? And so I think that's the sort of the filter that you have to put the work through if you want to win. Is it can't just be a good example of say that type of work. It has to be an amazing example of something new or something surprising that we haven't seen before. It was a very tricky thing, as I said, being the president of the jury, where the gold winning work, which is the only work eligible for the Grand LIA, comes from our agency, and I was very involved in all of those projects. And so unfortunately, I had to leave the room during the discussion around that whether there would be a Grand LIA. But the jury did come back to me and tell me afterwards why there wasn't. And their feeling was that maybe the two pieces, which was the bread exam and unfinished votes, weren't pieces that would go down in the history books that we would remember in 10 years from now. Of course, I completely disagree with that because I think they're amazing. But I'm only one voice on the jury, and you've of got to respect the professional opinions of the other jurors. But I think in terms of gold winners, for me, the unfinished votes did something that's never been done before. It brought back to life a boy that was killed in the Parkland shootings. And the big challenge for that one was he wasn't a famous person. It wasn't like we had 1,000 pieces of film to recreate him from. We had to find a way to recreate him from half a dozen different photographs and like 2 pieces of video. So it was, that was really interesting. But probably the most gratifying thing about that is that it really did have an impact in the election in last November. For the first time, there were more gun sense candidates elected to Parliament than ever before. And obviously that's not all our doing, but we like to think that we had an influence on that, and that we encouraged young people to vote and vote for gun sense candidates. So I love that piece, and I think it did make a real difference. And then the other piece, the bread exam, I think it's a wonderful example of a culturally relevant and sensitive idea that solves a huge health issue for a great percentage of the female population in the world. So I love ideas that really bounce off culture and understand the culture that they're playing into. For me, last year for McCann Health, it was the Breath of Life, which really brought to life that idea of understanding the cultural relevance of blow painting in China and building it into the idea. And this one really understood the pressures on women in Muslim society, that they can't, show their bodies or anything like that. So I think this, that was a really smart way of solving a difficult challenge in a country that needs it as much as anyone. So, I in the end, I think we all loved those gold pieces, but it's a shame we didn't have a Grand LIA this year.